Hi, I'm Brian Schroe from Beyondware. In this video, I'll show you one example of how you can think outside the box and use some of the advanced sections in Beyond Typicals to create something unique. For instance, in this example, I'll use some earth layers, invisible sections, custom retaining walls, and free pipes, and use the customization available in Beyond Typicals with those elements to create a highway tunnel. Check it out. Alright, so I've recently been playing around with some of our bridge sections and also some of the newer roadway sections to Beyond Typicals like our earth layers and free pipes, and I had an idea to kind of think outside of the box and create a tunnel using some of those sections. So I'll go ahead and use some of those features in this video and try to get a realistic looking tunnel here, which will basically consist of a rectangular tunnel with some roadway elements and then earth sections all around it, so it appears that this roadway is actually buried underneath the earth. So let's go ahead and get started. I'll first bring in some bridge lanes here. Let's assume this will be 3 lanes. And then I want to create a couple of shoulders here for the tunnel, which we don't have in the bridge sections. So what we can do is bring in our common lanes and rename them and resize them and turn off traffic to basically duplicate a shoulder. Go ahead and adjust our striping. I'll go to the hierarchy for that. Through this work, you'll see me in the hierarchy a lot. I'll be renaming a lot of sections. I'm just trying to stay organized as I'm going to be bringing in a lot of elements that are pretty similar, like earth layers and free pipes. I want to make sure I'm able to find the section I want. I'll go ahead and make this a continuous stripe. This right-hand shoulder I've elected to make a little bit wider, basically to serve as space for a stalled vehicle or vehicles that have to pull over in the tunnel. I think I'm also going to duplicate this, so we'll make it essentially a double-barreled tunnel. So we'll duplicate all these elements and put them over on the left and have traffic facing the camera. Let's go ahead and flip that. Also, we will need to include an invisible section. So I'll go down to our roads, sections, bottom of the list, and grab an invisible section, and I'll be able to separate those two directions. Let's go with something we can see. Let's go with 30 feet here. So, okay, I've got now 3 lanes of traffic. Let's get a couple more for shoulders, and I will go ahead and make those changes. For longer tunnels, we need an escape route, so we're going to go ahead and put in a couple of sidewalks here. And we would assume no pedestrians are going to be actively walking down this tunnel, so I'll go ahead and turn those off. There we go. Now, the next part of our tunnels are the walls. So I'm going to go back to our roads section and grab a retaining wall custom. And I'll use a few of these to make sure that we are building our walls and the cap over the top using some of those individual components of those walls. So I'll start over here on the left and go ahead and select this retaining wall custom, and I'm going to give it a new name and say, let's just call this southbound on the left side. So southbound wall left. That way I can keep track of those elements. Then, so I have 3 different components of this. I'm not going to want my, where is it? My barrier rail at the top. So I really just want the footer and the stem. The stem is going to serve on the left side and isn't tall enough to begin with. So I'll go ahead and scale that upwards. I'll unlock so I don't scale the X direction. We'll just keep that as it is. Go ahead and scale the Y up quite a bit. I'll just want to make sure it's tall enough for our largest vehicles to pass under, and it looks like we've got plenty of clearance there. So let's knock that down to maybe 1.6. I'll keep an eye. That looks like those trucks will get there, but let's get a little bit more factor of safety and go ahead and say 1.8. All right. So now I can also go ahead and move my footer, which I don't need since my bridge sections already kind of show a concrete bottom to this box that I'm creating. So I'm going to use this footer, move it up and scale it, and basically align it over the top of this, this section of tunnel. There we go. So I move the external position up in the Y direction, and I'll move it right in the X direction, and then I'm going to start scaling that upwards until it stretches over the top. And I'll have to come back to this, make some tweaks to make sure that that lines up on both the left and right side here. So I'll go ahead and create a similar retaining wall over here. I won't need the footer, so I'll just turn everything off except for that stem. All right, so now I've created a box for the southbound side. I'll go ahead and do the same thing to my northbound side. Okay, there we go. Now I've got my walls and my cap over the top of those. Before I go ahead and start changing or adding earth layers around these, I notice my section labels are all hovering above, so I'll go ahead and show off that apply default section label. So I'm going to go ahead and take one of my sections and drop that height down within the lane or within the tunnel. And then maybe I'll move that a little bit forward. Let's move it all the way to the front for now. And then what I can do is maybe I'll turn off my vertical leader lines, turn those off. And then so if I want to apply that to all of my section labels, I just have to click here at the bottom of this section label menu and say save settings as default and then apply to all. So you'll see it's basically moved all those labels to the front, turn those leader lines off, and move them down as well. Now I'll go ahead and add in some earth layers. So I'll bring in one just to show you what this is like. So it has a width of 4 feet to it. That can go down to 0. What we're going to be doing is modifying the size of these layers and pushing them around and scaling them up and down. So the actual width of the element is irrelevant. It's just the later customization using this earth sections tool that will get us a big wide earth section. We might need a few of them. I think there are some limitations as to how much we can scale these and move them around, so I might need to create a few different ones and kind of create boxes around this. I'll note here that one of the limitations of just the elements that we have in Beyond Typicals, we're not really going to be able to create an arched tunnel here. I suppose you could, but you would need to create enough small elements like this to line those up in an arch fashion, kind of like pixels, at the scale of pixels, and then you don't have to do the same with your earth layers until you could form that up into a right angle. So that would be really labor intensive, so we'll just stick to rectangular shafts for now. Okay, so let's go ahead and change this. In this drop-down menu, I want to grab the largest earth item we have here. So you'll see we have an earth 4 feet piece, and when I start moving that around, you'll see that that is a 4 foot by 4 foot earth square extended down the length of the section. But I can also scale that up. So I can take this section, and you'll see as I move it, I'm moving away from the width of this section, which is why I mean the width of that really doesn't matter. So I can go ahead and call that 0. This is where naming is going to come in handy, just to make sure that when I do go back and make edits to these, if I need to, I can try to find them as quickly as possible. So I'm going to call this earth layers middle for now. And and that way I can try to go find that in my hierarchy, because it's going to be hard to go and grab that from the model. All right, so I've got an earth type of 4 feet, and I could also add multiple ones, and I may do that just to limit the number of sections here. But let's start with this first one. I'm going to scale this up as big as I can. Oh, it's only scaling in the X for some reason, but I think if we unlock that, we can go in the X and Y. Yeah, we can. So already, just with one component of one earth layer section, we've got a nice big block of earth that we can move around. For this middle one, looks like I can change my scale in the X direction down a little bit. I can also adjust the external position to try to place that between the 2 tunnel chambers here. There we go. So now I've got that. I think what I'm going to do is really maximize this earth layer stuff. So I'm going to use all 3 components here. So I get the option of creating 1, 2, and 3 earth sections. So I'm going to line up 1, 2, and 3 here. And then we can also do a 1, 2, and 3 to the left and right, and then maybe create a couple more across the top and bottom. So I'll speed this up after this, but I'll go ahead and create all those earth sections right now. All right, so I'm just scaling these so there's a little less overlap here. You'll see those 2 elements are kind of blurry. If you look real close, it looks like they're competing in space. Just trying to minimize that, so just knocking the scale down. Turns out I only needed 2 blocks here, and I'll do another earth layers bottom and get a couple blocks down there. So here's where organization matters. My left top, which I just realized had a 3rd element toggled on, was duplicating this piece right down here, which is why I couldn't figure out why I wasn't changing that. So that's why I went and renamed a lot of this stuff to make sure that those elements are all organized and squared away. So now I've got my sections where I want them once I move this one back into place. So there we go. We've got kind of our tunnel. You can see it's a big 3D block. I lengthened the section to get a little bit more realism through there. Since we've got the longer section, I think I'll boost up the volume to show more traffic moving through here, really get kind of a urban underground highway feel to it, like in New York City or a Boston or something like that. So we don't have emissive lighting yet. I think in the future, a really cool feature would be to be able to place some lights along here, but you can see that just kind of moving the camera into these tunnels, even with a cap and the sun moved away, that we do still get decent visibility in the tunnel here. These labels I'll probably move around as well. But then one thing I want to add here is kind of use our free pipe, and instead of putting it underground, I want to mimic maybe some ventilation shafts up here at the top, or some ductwork overhead. So I'll go ahead and pull those in, and I'll raise them up using those external positioning factors. And then I think I'll change that watercolor to black to hopefully look like an empty pipe as opposed to one filled with colored water. Let's go ahead and pull in, I don't know, maybe a 24-inch pipe. We'll change the color to black. I'm thinking here that I can also use the fact that our underground sections can create multiple pipes. So I might use that to our advantage and line up a couple of these next to each other. Again, I'll admit I'm not a tunnel engineer, but we'll try to make these look like something realistic. So again, you'll see I can raise that up and essentially hang it on the top of that tunnel. And I'm taking note of my X and Y positions. If you slow down some of my work earlier, you'll see that I was playing around with both an inner and external position. Ultimately, the inner position I was kind of using as more of a fine-tune edit, because that just moves it a little bit slower when you're using the spin bar. So I'll go ahead and use these and create these pipes here. All right, so I made some tweaks to the section. I cleaned up some of the wall positionings. I narrowed the gap here just so it's a little bit easier to see the whole thing when you load the project. I added in some traffic customization. So you'll see I've got an HOV lane that has a few of the vehicles toggled off to show some more sedans, minivans, and city buses. Those are also moving at a higher speed with lower volume than the other common lanes next to them, just to really hammer home the HOV aspect of those lanes. I moved the sun a little bit just to shine a little bit better light at the front of the tunnel. And then I'm going to go ahead and create a custom label just to label the vertical clearance here. So let's go ahead and get into that. I will add a custom label using our custom label tool. You can see wherever I hover this is going to place it. I'm going to want to put it right over the top of the front of this section. So I'll click up here and then go ahead and make that change. So now I can edit that label. Let me turn placement mode off. So I've got label 1. Let's go ahead and say vertical clearance. And then our body text, let's just say like 17 feet 6 inches. There we go. And I think we can boost that text height up a little bit. Let's make that bigger than the top, actually. So let's go like 45 seems fine. Let's center this here, center that text as well. I'm actually going to get rid of that stem, which is the leader line width, top and bottom. If I make that top 0, that leader line just goes away. Let's see, label size. It's a little too tall, so I'll knock down the Y size of that label. Let's go 125. Then we can move that label down a little bit. So in the Z direction, let's drop that down just a hair. It's a little too far. There we go. And then just to hammer home kind of a warning sign type thing, let's make that a yellow background and some black text. There we go. Let's see if we can play with some of the fonts to make that pop a little bit better. That's pretty good. We could also maybe knock down the saturation there. Okay, so I'll go ahead and create that same label over here and copy a lot of those features. So what I'm going to do is place this label on this same section here. Since I've got so many sections, I don't want to lose where that label's placed, and I am going to want to refer back to this label 1 so that I can copy the RGB values and the Z elevation on that. So I'm going to just place that same label having this common lane moving in the what I'm calling the northbound direction selected, so I can more quickly and easily in edit mode change between this label 1 and the label 2 that I'll create now. right, so that'll do it. Just wanted to use this video to show you how you can use a lot of the customization of our more advanced sections to create something unique like a tunnel. Thanks for watching.